So my name is Aaron Walker, and I am the state field director for Count My Vote. And what that means is we'll talk, and to answer the gentleman's question, eventually in this process we have to get about 102,000 signatures across the state. So my job that falls under my purview is to manage that signature gathering effort. With me over here is Michael Shea. He is one of our field directors who helps manage a part of the state. And Brent is our videographer. So, just so you all know, there's a couple of things, procedural, as it were. The Count My Vote is a citizens initiative, and there's a number of hoops that we have to jump through. And one of them is holding 7 meetings throughout the state. We held 3 yesterday. We're holding 4 today, and we, by Lieutenant Governor's office, we have to record the meeting. And then we will provide that recording back to the Lieutenant Governor's office. And it will be made available on the Lieutenant Governor's website. So some people get skittish if they find out that they're going to be on camera and then it's posted in the public. I just want you all to know that we have to do that legally. The other thing is for those people who aren't able to attend, we also have a statewide hearing on Saturday at noon. It's over the internet. It is open to everybody in the state. So we'll have 8 total. And this is just the first of our public engagement. These 2 days are just the first of what I'm assuming will be a very long public engagement process. So from hearing all of you talk, I'm assuming most of you don't like what we're here to talk about today. But let me just say this. We're grateful that you're here. I think for the ability to improve and increase the dialogue about voting and voter participation is positive. And what we're going to do today is we have a presentation. Last night it was about a half hour. I don't want to talk that long. So I think we're going to go through it kind of quickly. And then we have the room for about an hour, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember, but you might know because you work here. I don't know. Maybe they probably a little leeway. And anyway, after I'm done talking, it's your turn. And you can tell us what you think. We'll be happy to listen. And then we'll go on to our next hearing of Price. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is, in its most simple form, this is it. We believe that every vote in Utah should count, and that all voters should have a voice. So our mission is to simply increase voter participation in the state of Utah. Go ahead. So this is kind of what we're going to hit today. We're going to do 3 parts. Part 1, we're just going to quickly cover the caucus system. I see you actually had the history of the caucus system printed out and highlighted. Good to go. We're going to talk a little bit about the decline of voter participation in the state. And then we're going to talk about what our initiative intends to do. So, we can do that one. This is just talking about what we're going to go over. So, as you all know, and it's through the Duchesne County Republican Chair, is that right? So a lot of people in the room know this. This is how it works right now, right? You have your neighborhood meeting. Those delegates are elected in your neighborhood meeting. They go to the state convention, and at that point, the candidates speak. And as you all know, there's a voting system that goes on at the convention. If a delegate gets 40% of the votes at the convention, they go straight to a primary. If they only get 40% of the votes, they go to the primary election. But if they get 60, they blow it out of the water. They can go straight to that general election against the Democrat or Republican opponent. I think it's fair. I think we should be fair and be open and honest. There are a number of good things about the caucus system. I don't want you to think that we hate it. I participate in my neighborhood caucus system. And you know what? This is going to be available online. So you're welcome to download it too. As you can see here, I'm not going to read them all, but candidates get to talk directly to delegates. There's the notion of rural counties or what are not flyover counties in this system, and you're able to maintain the solid foundation of your party platform. And a lot of people believe that it limits the influence of money in election. So this is what our belief and our research has shown, that for all Utahns, not just individuals who are in the caucus convention system, we believe that it limits contact for all Utahns, for everybody. We believe that delegates, if you're new to a neighborhood, might not know, or if you're new to a neighborhood, you don't know about your caucus meeting, but you wanted to go to convention, you might not have the opportunity to go. And so there's potential for people to be excluded. We believe, and I'm sure that this will raise some opinion in this room, we believe that the convention system has the potential to make rural areas not as important. And I'll tell you why.
No, let's hear that one.
We'll get to it. I promise we'll get to it. We believe that the delegates don't maintain all of Utah's voters' beliefs. And we'll get to these, I promise. And that money actually has a significant presence and influence in the caucus system.
Are you presenting these as facts to other areas?
Top to bottom.
Outside your opinions?
Yeah, this is
facts
this
to
is
other
the
areas
standard. This is the
outside
standard.
of rural Utah.
Yeah, this is the standard deck.
This is metro versus rural.
This is, I promise, we'll get to your,
I think we should.
I promise.
Thank you.
And is this available online as well?
Yes,
Like
ma'am.
Your stuff?
This will be all available online at our website, which is countmyvoteutah.org. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, so please don't take my word for this. I think it's will also be made available on the Lieutenant Governor's website. Okay, so all state party delegates represent less than 0.2% of Utah's population.
Well, you said represent.
Sir, I promise you will have time to talk. But if I don't get through this, we'll never finish it.
Well,
I get your math.
present the facts.
Sir,
You're saying that the state party delegates is 2%, not represented.
okay. Thank you. I promise if you let me just get through this, you can beat me up in 20 minutes. Is that fair? I'll stay here and listen to it. The Republicans are slightly only higher, at just 0.6%. How many people just in the room, so I know, are delegates? Okay, so a decent amount. So you know you get a ton of mail and outreach, a phone call maybe from Orrin Hatch when it's your birthday, and that's pretty great. There's no doubt about it. However, it's just such a small population of people that get all of that information. We would just simply like to increase the information to the entire state. And we think that second from the bottom, that the rest of Utah just isn't engaged. And we'd like to see a higher level of engagement across the state. So these are some numbers from the Utah Voter Database. In 2009, which is, and municipals, of course, are not caucus meetings. So in 2009, across the state, we had 19.4% registered voters. In 2010, at the caucus of registered voters, there was 0.05% attendance. In 2010, the primary turnout, that increased by 15%. In 2011, we went back to a municipal, which is the direct. We had 14.9. And then 2012, where we had the highest in recent years because of what some people would call the Romney bump, or some people would talk about the conservative Tea Party movement, whatever you would like to assign to it. With the highest in years, it still was only 10.7% of registered Utah voters. And then the primary was 17.3%. So this is what we're talking about in the rural counties. So parties distribute their delegates in the convention by population. Well, the majority of the population is in the Wasatch Valley. 72% of rural delegates live in the Wasatch Front. Only 28% live in rural areas throughout the state. So 60%, if you have to get a 60% of delegate vote it's feasible that you would never have to go to a rural area in the caucus system. I'm not saying that's what happens. I'm saying that's a strategy that could happen.
You have a little bit of an error there. It's not based on population. It's that we base our delegates designation on voter turnout, on Republican voting strength for the Republicans, and the Democrats do the same.
Okay, but is it fair to say that because of the population in...
No, it's how active the voters are in each neighborhood.
Okay, well, we'll talk.
Okay, but
Fair point.
a
Okay.
fixed fact.
Go ahead. So one of the things that we noticed, and this is from the Utah Foundation research report. This is not us sitting in a back room. They did a poll of Utah voters, registered voters in Utah, and then delegates. So across the state, Utah voters, registered voters, have agreed that improving the quality of K-12 is their #1 priority. In 2010, the Republican delegates ranked improving the quality of K-12 education 11th among 22 issues. Getting the United States out of the United Nations was 7th. It comes from the Utah Foundation research report. Oh, will you go back one? I didn't do the poll. This is from an independent source that was done in 2012. In 2010. In 2012, as delegates, again, they didn't rank improving K-12 as a top 5 issue. So our point is sometimes the delegates don't necessarily fully represent the views of all Utahns. All right.
You had to stretch for that argument, though.
I know they represent their parties. Maybe not all of Utah, because
Well,
the majority of Utah is
okay,
unaffiliated.
let me get through and you can.
And what were the demographics of the poll? I mean, if you polled the Wasatch Front,
It was a statewide poll. I didn't conduct the poll, sir.
You can make a poll say what you want.
Oh. Okay. So last year, the Republican Party campaign, $6.5 million was spent on the caucus system. That went to 2,483 delegates. That was over $2,700 per delegate. So that's a lot of money in the caucus system. All I'm saying is the notion that money doesn't influence politics at the caucus level is not true.
I didn't see any of the money in my pocket, though.
I'm not saying that you received it. I'm saying that it was spent on other things. Okay, go ahead. Because that would be buying votes, and this isn't Chicago in the 60s, right? All right, so, part 2 of our presentation. We can fly through this because I think you probably want to get to the nuts and bolts of what we want to talk about and then give your comments. We simply believe that the current state election system is a barrier. It doesn't allow all Utahns to participate. Go ahead. And this is again from the Utah Foundation report. It's just an interesting quote. That the election system can either hinder or encourage participation. We want it to encourage, not hinder. So we've had a historically high rate of voter participation, but it's declined in recent decades. In the 60s and 70s, we were in the top 5 for participation in the U.S. Now we're number 40 in the state. There's an interesting correlation. Utah is incredibly unique in that people who are involved in volunteerism, or a lot of people who are involved in the LDS church, so they're heavily involved in their community, that typically translates, volunteerism across the country typically translates into higher voter participation, and we're not seeing that here. Go ahead. And this is from the Census Bureau. Just gives the numbers on the decline from 1960, when we were in the top 5, to now, when we're in the bottom 10 of the state. I think it's a problem that's unique to Utah. Other states that surround us are seeing an increase in voter participation. It's a Utah-specific problem. So, go ahead. There was an interesting report that was written by this Utah Data Points. It was called "Why is Utah's Turnout Falling?" And he said, these are possible correlations. He said, well, is it because we're a young state, or we have a lower median age? He said, no, we kind of went through that and said, no, I don't believe that's true. And he said, is it because we're kind of a one-party state? He said, no, 38 other states have a legislature and governor's office controlled by the same party, and they have higher voter turnout than we do. So, and then he went on to talk about it could be that the caucus system is a barrier. And that's what our belief is. We think that we could open up the election system to all Utahns.
Is California one of those 38 states?
California's system isn't what we're talking about. We'll actually
Oh,
talk
I just wonder if they were one of the 38 that's controlled by the same.
Well, they have higher voter participation than we do, for sure.
Oh, cool.
So, okay, so this is just a quick timeline, just showing that the United States has gone from only white male landowners being able to vote to their Help America Vote Act in 2002, just making voting easier. But Utah, we believe, has made it more difficult. And you can see the thresholds, the convention thresholds, 80% to 60%. And then recently, as 2012, the delegates voted against any change to make it a little more accessible. So this is going to throw you guys over the moon, I know, but we believe that it's antiquated, restrictive, exclusionary, unfair, and least accountable. So this is why we think that it's antiquated. We believe that it's long overdue to modernize this system. I mean, like the first bullet says, years ago, Utah just held elections on one single day. We've modernized, we have mail-in voting, online voting for military people, and expats who live overseas. We simply want to take that a step further. Restrictive. The caucus system requires candidates to receive over 40% of the delegate vote to force the primary. That's the highest in the country. Colorado, New Hampshire, and Connecticut are 30%, 20%, and 15%. So other states there are 7 other states that still use a convention system. But their thresholds are much, much lower. And it's the highest barrier for potential candidates to get into a primary. We also believe that it excludes Utah voters, especially those in the military, maybe moms who have a hard time getting to a specific caucus meeting in a specific time. Working Utahns, and I'm talking about gentlemen like in the medical profession, service, police, fire, folks like that, and any other Utahn who cannot physically be present. You might not agree with this, but I will just tell you from last night at a hearing at Salt Lake Community College, we had one gentleman who stood up, and there was a lot of people, of course, like yourselves, who don't necessarily agree with what we're doing. But the gentleman from the military stood up and said, I appreciate this because I would like to participate, but I'm a career military man. I've been deployed around the world, and I can't participate. I respect that. At our press conference when we launched this, we had a gentleman who showed up, and he's an emergency room doctor. He said, I do my best to serve our community. I'm not able to attend. I would like to. We feel like that it doesn't equally represent women. And I'm sure that will anger some of you.
Because they can't go to the caucus meeting, or
Well, just because if you look at the numbers,
they've got kids, they can't go?
no, what I'm saying is the number of delegates is not equal to the number of registered voters, female registered voters. So right there, women are underrepresented in both parties. So only 25% of the GOP delegates are women, but in the Democratic Party, 43% are. Well, I'm going to argue whether or not they're able to go. It's not my point is that women in the delegate universe, there's 75% men, 25% women.
Isn't that the way it is in the Congress and the Senate?
Well, I'm not talking about the U.S. Congress. I'm talking about I'm talking about voting in Utah.
I know, but I'm taking that as an example.
Well, do you?
The
I guess
nation
let me
is
ask this question, and I don't want to engage. I promise we'll talk about it. As a woman, wouldn't you prefer more female representatives in Congress?
No, I would like to be.
Okay, that's fair.
I would like to be there myself to rattle some chains, but.
Actually, I know a whole bunch of women who would have liked to come to this meeting today, but you planned it on UEA's conference day, so they can't attend. They're school teachers, and they can't be here today because of when you planned your meeting. So it's kind of hypocritical for you to say there's not access for people to come to the caucus meetings when your meetings like today aren't even accessible.
Oh, it certainly wasn't intentional. It was our tight time
It was
frame.
very intentional.
Ma'am, I'm the one who scheduled them, I'm telling you.
The metro meetings are in the evening, but the rural meetings are during the middle
No,
of the
they were
day.
during the day.
Yeah, rural meeting is during the day, you have.
Well, so Price is tonight at 7. Cedar City is tonight at 7. Sevier County
Yesterday,
is right
in the
now.
afternoon.
Utah State, Logan was it on campus at noon?
Mhm.
So, look, this is only the beginning of our public engagement. We also have one, like I
Who's
said, at
funding it?
noon.
How much money is
Sir, just
invested?
please let me finish, and you can ask questions. We have one more at noon on Saturday that anybody can attend online. All right, go ahead. We have been working on the issue since 2006. We've been trying to work with the legislature. They didn't do anything, and that's their prerogative. It's hard to be an elected official in the caucus system and vote for change. We talked and worked with the Utah political parties. As you know, the state central committee and the convention both declined to open it up a little bit more.
Actually, can I clarify that? Because
No,
that's a
please,
statement.
let me just finish, please.
No, we actually have a special central committee meeting, and we've actually passed almost everything that you've mentioned, past our executive committee with almost 100% support for opening access to
When
everyone.
did you do that?
Night before last, we had
So
our
once Count My
caucus.
Vote initiative had started.
Yeah, it was actually
Interesting.
stimulated.
Okay, so we are working for it. That's great. So we feel that the Citizens Initiative is the next open spot. Okay, go ahead. So we feel, this is what we feel that the benefits are. We think that we can improve participation, we can improve candidates' access to ballots, preserve the power of your political parties. We aren't trying to completely get away with the caucus. I think that's important for you to know. We don't want to get away with your caucus system. Reduce the potential for fraud, and remove the systemic obstacles to participation. Go ahead. So this is what we think, this is what we propose. Then this is kind of the nuts and bolts. Any individual who intends to run for office must gather 2% of his party's signatures from his party. That's what
No, the one he designates that he's going to run in their primary. He doesn't have to be affiliated with that party the way your initiative is written.
okay, I'm just telling you,
I could go run as a Democrat right now.
would you want to?
I might, if I could get on the ballot, why not?
Oh, well, that's up to you.
I want to run as a Republican.
Okay, so if they get 2% of the parties of signatures, then they can go to the primary ballot. The caucus convention will still happen, and the caucus and convention can then formally endorse a nominee and express their preference. Okay?
But they lose power.
They don't lose the power, they have the endorsement. But an individual such as myself, let's say that I gather my 2% of signatures, I can get on the ballot. All we're trying to do is open up the system.
So if you're a Democrat and you get 2% of the
Democratic signatures.
Democratic.
Let's say
no,
I'm
no, no.
running for Jim Matheson's.
No, if you're a Democrat and you want to run in the Republican primary, you can go get 2% of the Republican primary signatures and you can run on our ballot and put an R behind your name, the way your initiative is
Well,
written.
we would state that no one would do, we would assume that no one would.
Nobody would ever work a system.
That's not what Bob Lieutenant Governor.
Follow that, come on, man.
The 2%, look, in a lot of states, it's between 1 and 5%. 1 and 5%, we felt that 2 was a fair number. Because especially for a statewide office, that would be about 12 to 13,000 signatures that someone would have to gain to run for a statewide office. All right, go ahead.
Unless you want to run as a Democrat, then you don't need like 12.
So it says right here, just to clarify, this is a direct primary. It's not open like in California, where it's for anyone. It's a direct primary through your party's ballot. Go ahead. All right, so these are just some of the nuts and bolts. It's a direct primary election. Rather than being nominated by a small number of delegates, nominated by a broader group of Utah voters. A candidate seeks the signatures and then files that with their county recorder or lieutenant governor's office, and then that puts them on their primary ballot. Go ahead. This is just, that's fine. There's nothing we've hit on that. So let's keep going.
Oh, back to that one issue before that.
You know, this and this.
All right, so hold on one second. So a primary election is proposed by the Count My Vote. Would you want us to go back? We can go back. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go back to the slide. 'Cause
All right, the intent of the 2% threshold is to limit non-serious candidates from placement on the primary election ballot, while not placing too high of a barrier to nomination for any serious candidate. And this is what I was talking about. For example, a Republican Party candidate running for a federal office would require to get 11,500 signatures. The Democrats, you're right, there are significantly fewer Democrats in the state. They would only need to get 3,000 for the Democrat ticket,
Yeah.
not for Republican.
So,
Okay.
and then we could all go, I could like ask all this room to come and vote for me as a platform Republican running as a Democrat because the Democrats don't make you affiliate. So I could have all this room come and vote for me.
Well, that has to do with the party rules, not my vote.
I know,
rules.
it's just.
So
that
if you don't
can
like the
be
party rules, you need to work with the Democrat Party, not the Republicans have a closed primary. You have to be registered
But you're
Republican.
opening this up to all kinds of fraud opportunity.
I don't agree, but let's keep going. Okay. All right. We would not eliminate or prohibit your caucus convention system. Political parties can utilize that system to endorse a candidate. If the convention system allowed all candidates, instead of that 40% number, if they had a 20% threshold, we would have had at least 5 more primaries in the state since 2002. And we think that's a good thing. I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that opening up politics to the state is a good thing. Go ahead. So we're about done. And this is pretty much the last slide. So we provided and we presented our language to the 15 past chairs of Utah Bar Association. And we asked them, is this constitutional? And they gave a letter to the Lieutenant Governor's office that said, this is clearly constitutional, falls within the Constitution of the state. The interesting thing is not all those gentlemen agreed with it, but they all said it's constitutional. So that's it. So this is it. Here's our information. Please feel free to email anytime, call our campaign office, give you our numbers. But now, for this part of it is for you to just express your frustration and anger. And yell and scream at us, and we will shake our heads. In the event that there is somebody here who actually likes what I have to say, let's be cordial. And remember, I'm a nice guy. You don't need to yell at me. I will listen. And you can express your frustration, and at the end, we can all shake hands and go to Taco Bell or something. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to tell you a little bit of the history on this, just because this has actually.
Stand up.
Should I stand up? Okay.
Can you limit it to like maybe
Yeah, I'll be
3
really
minutes?
fast,
Okay,
so I can be
perfect.
faster than that.
Okay.
I just wanted to say really quickly that this has already been tried in Utah before. In 1937, believe it or not, Utah was a Democratic-led state, and the Democrats held the House and the Senate, and we had a Democrat. His name was Herbert Maugh, and he was our Senate president here in Utah. And he ran for the state, for U.S. Senate, and he failed in his race. And he ran also for governor, and he failed in his race for that. He was very fluent, and he had a lot of friends in the legislature.
Oh, yes. Am I blocking that shot?
No, you're fine.
I'm fine.
He was very affluent. He had a lot of friends in the legislature, and he did get elected because his party vetted him out because of his voting record. So even the Democrats didn't want him running as a Democrat. But he decided that an open primary would help him. And so he got his legislator friends to change how we do business in Utah for 10 years. And so they changed over to the primary system. And in an article in 1946, they had this in place, this system he's talking about, for 9 years in Utah. And this is the Deseret News of 1946 and just a few of their comments about their system. Last Tuesday, about 10% of the resident voters of Utah went to the polls. If you remember his charts, he was saying we had 19 last year, 17 year before, 16% turnout. They had 10% turnout under this system that they are proposing. 112,000 people showed up in Salt Lake County out of 120,000 voters. Okay, so they had only 10% turnout. And then they said the small voice, or the small vote, which has become characteristic of our primaries and runoffs, makes it possible for political machines to select the candidates. Often those candidates do not adequately represent the party whose standards they bear. And then they lay out what they think would be the perfect thing for their state to go back to. And they said a simple combination of the primary and convention systems does seem to have the most advantages with the fewest disadvantages. Supposing delegates at cottage meetings conducted under strict rules set out in the law itself would gather in a party convention and select 2 candidates for office. Then the voters at large could select the party's candidates in a direct primary. It says such a vote, a system would place the responsibility for 2 good nomination candidates directly on the party itself without depriving the public of selecting the particular candidates who are to appear on the party's general election ballots. Anyway, then it goes on to say here that it will cut the cost of elections in half. And if you're familiar with Nevada, who has a primary system right now, in Utah, we have 26 representatives to the state senate. To run in a state senate seat here in Utah, it costs an average of $50,000 for your election. In Nevada, which is a smaller state, which should cost less under the same circumstances, they have an open primary or direct primary, and their cost per election is $1 million to raise. The money goes straight to all the media outlets, and this is why you will not see all of the people in opposition of this on the news, because they're going to put up their advertising fees, they're going to rake in the bucks, and what was an $800 ad for a political candidate will be a $30,000 ad in the future. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I think that's a great comment, and we're here to listen, so I appreciate everybody being here. 1 second. I would just like to note, the Deseret News, 1 slide up, and the Salt Lake Tribune, your editorial was from the 40s, ours is from last month. They both came out in favor of Count My Vote, the editorial boards of both papers.
Hence the millions of dollars.
Yeah. So you can give us $1 million ad buyout back and do it.
That just made my point.
Go ahead, Cam. What was your...
Last caucus meeting, before that caucus meeting, my husband and I got out and we canvassed our neighborhood of maybe 60 to 70 houses to make sure that everyone in our neighborhoods knew about the caucus meeting. We had the largest caucus meeting that we've had since I've been participating in the caucus. Those people who did not want to come chose that. I don't think this is fair for you to do this to us when if they don't want to come, they're not going to go vote. That's all I can say, is they're not going to vote. If they don't want to become interested in the caucus meeting, if they don't want to become interested in any of the politics, they're not going to do it. They're not going to vote in your program either.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just have a question. On those first couple slides that you showed us, you said that your research had shown, and then you started going down where, candidates are limited just to the exposure to the candidates is limited just to the delegates. Those first couple of slides, I'm wondering, where did you get your research?
A lot of it has to do with...
Because I was told I could keep my health insurance too, and that's gone. So I'm just wondering how much of this is based on solid research.
We pulled a lot of, that's an absolutely fair question. A lot of it was from independent polling that we didn't conduct. But
Paid for?
No. Actually, have we even paid for any polling? No. One poll? Was it just to gauge the public interest?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was just to gauge whether or not the public had an interest.
So on those claims that
So
you
it was
made,
mostly from the Utah Foundation reports.
So those claims that you make, is there some place that we can go to look and see where you got that information? Because I'm looking at those.
Was it the footnote said Utah Foundation report?
But where's
No,
their-
not on those first couple of those, did they?
Let-
Can you go back to the first couple slides? I didn't see where it sourced anything.
There's no source.
Well, and I think, and
And
that's
I
a fair, let
thought
me say
you'd make
this.
a great Jay Carney in that case, because you can sell it as fact when it has nothing to
Hey,
do with it.
I'm not gonna lie, my dream job was to be a White House press secretary, but definitely not for this
You're off to a good
administration.
start.
Not for this administration. So this has to do, so it's from the Utah Foundation Research Report, number 708, April 2012. And you know what, I think it's.
No, this, keep going back.
Keep going, okay. I think it's fair to also say that
Keep going back.
a lot of this is, and I think it's fair for us to say, this is, a
So,
lot of
but
this is our representation. This is our view,
Well,
this is
but-
our belief.
So
Well,
this is
go
an
back
opinion
to,
piece.
Next one.
2 slides.
One or two.
Right there. So when you got to this one, you said your research shows, and then you listed this.
No, he said these were their opinion.
Well, and then
No,
if you
no,
go,
he said their
if you go,
research showed. That was
if
his
you- and
exact
then
words, I
some-
wrote them
Okay.
down.
some of these, and then if
And
you
so I'm
look,
just wondering the research.
a lot, if you pull this slide deck from the website, you'll see a lot of these correlate to following slides.
Okay.
And a lot of the following slides have the
A lot of
source.
them or all of them do?
A lot of them. I mean,
Okay.
listen, politics is theory. That's fair to say.
Yep.
And this is
So how
this is
does-
our belief.
So
This is
how
what
does
we
the
believe.
biggest formula, when it's $1 million for the same race that we have in Utah, how does that support your findings that it limits the influence of money in elections?
Well, I think that what it goes back to is the amount of money that was spent in the most recent caucus.
But if we compared what they spend for the
I
same
don't-
race in other states that are already using this system, you're
But I don't
proposing.
think you can compare from state to state because their media prices are different, they're competing with national candidates. I think you have to compare it to prices in Utah.
Yeah, but
I
rate
don't
cards
think you
are
can
different.
compare it with Nevada.
Okay, but rate cards are different, I understand that, but there's a big difference between 50,000 per race and $1 million.
The media prices in Utah versus Nevada are not that much different.
The DMA.
He's the media man.
Well, and
All right,
I
so-
absolutely understand that, appreciate it.
Well, and I
let's
guess
get-
the other thing is when you say that we're 40th on that list and you're saying 38 other states, in my mind, I could probably list 10 or 12 that are completely opposite of anything I want to be a part of. You know, look at states back east or even California where you have a governor and a House and a Senate that are all Democrat. That doesn't mean that's what, you know, how many times has Utah been said that we're the best run state? And look at all the, matter of fact, I saw an individual that was very much in favor of this, what you're presenting today, and on the same presentation, he's sitting there touting about how Utah's the best run state, and he had a whole presentation on, you know,
I
I
think
thought,
that's-
wow, you know,
That's a fair point. I think it's fair to say.
you're saying on
that-
one hand we're great, and then you're on the other hand, you're saying we're broken.
But that doesn't mean we can improve. I mean,
Yeah, I
we should
think
always
there's-
be trying to increase voter
Well, I'll be
participation.
honest with you, the way the rest of the country's going, I'm proud to be number 40.
Okay, I don't want to get into a huge tit for tat back and forth. But let me just say then we'll go to you, ma'am, and then to you, sir. The Pew Charitable Trust, that named us one of the best managed states in the country, also put out a study that said we were one of the lowest voter participation. So I don't think there's a correlation between best managed and voter participation. I don't. Go ahead, ma'am.
That maybe it's because our voters are more educated.
Okay.
Yes.
But that wasn't what I was gonna say. You keep saying "are." Who is "are"? Who is behind this?
Count my vote. So the executive committee is Gail Miller, Norma Matheson, Governor Levitt is involved in it, and then
LeVar
Rich
Bell.
McKeon and LeVar whatever kind of the.
Kirk Jowers.
And thank you, Kirk Jowers. Our legal counsel is a gentleman named Matt Sanderson.
Kirk Jowers, who has expressed a desire to be governor,
Kirk Jowers from the Hinckley Institute.
who has self-professed that he's interested in being governor.
Let me be.
Just like the gentleman in my article.
Let me be clear, I have no interest in Kirk Jowers' political ambitions. Go ahead.
One of the slides you...
Was it Mr. Haslam, was that right?
Yes.
Mr. Haslam.
One of the slides you showed up here was showing how the voter participation decreased,
Yes, sir.
but you are comparing municipal elections, which does not have a caucus system, and the general elections.
What,
And they're two different things. You can't
the
put.
slide with the graph was
No.
not
No,
municipal.
not on the graph.
Okay.
You have a slide up here.
It was the one with the
Show
percentages that
increase in
this
percentages.
young lady was referencing.
But you cannot compare a municipal election, so all them off-season elections in municipalities, that slide is lying to the public as far as I know.
No, our point is
That's
that,
not
our point is
what we're
that it,
discussing.
all our point was, sir, in that slide is that municipal elections have had an equally, in that direct primary for for how the municipals run, has had a, at times higher percentage of participation. That's all we're saying. Go ahead, sir.
These states that have this other system,
Yes, the 7 that I mentioned.
count my vote or whatever,
No, I was saying that there's
Don't
7
have-
states that still use a convention system.
okay.
Yes, sir.
So the rest of them, the other, what, 43
Yes, sir.
or 50 if you're Obama? The other 43, how many of those have 100, 115, 150% turnout for the votes as opposed to the caucus system? That as far as I know, we've never had even 100% show up. And
Sir,
that's why you're wanting this.
I can answer that, sir. I don't know a lot about.
What I'm saying is, you said it, you know, it can't be corrupted. Well, look at all of our wonderful states to the east that have this system that you're wanting.
Well, even the ones you mentioned that have a lower vote, or
I mean, I've got
percentage that
grandpas
they get to
that
primary,
live
all those
in
things you
74 that
mentioned.
would love to vote.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And you can in Ohio.
I have two other systems, if I might.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Walker, thank you for coming to Vernal. I wish we could have spent the night and enjoyed our accommodations here in Vernal.
We'll
Spent a
still
little
take you
more
out to
time
lunch and talk to you.
And had a broader sense of our community.
I didn't bring my Kevlar.
But we're not that
We
bad.
have lots of Kevlar.
A couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
One is you're presenting up there as fact that this prevents flyover counties. I disagree with that. I have some very deep concerns about us becoming less relevant to our elected officials when they don't have to come to our communities and address our caucus and our convention system. I'm really concerned about, as are other small communities within the state of Utah. I've seen that both from my media perspective and from my civic time that I've invested in this community. That drives our elected officials here so that they can hear and listen to what our interests are in rural Utah. Without that, I'm afraid that we will become a homogenized version of the Wasatch Front. That's what my biggest concern is. My first question is, what are you going to do, your plan going to do, to prevent that from happening? Have you thought it through? Second part of the question is, who is funding your initiative? You had indicated that our caucus system was somewhat perverted because of the amount of money that was invested per delegate. Even the count my vote name, I think, is disingenuous because it's implying that not everyone's vote is counted in the state of Utah. Everyone who shows up to a caucus system is able to vote for their delegates, and their vote is counted, and their opinion is heard. So I think what you're saying right here, by count my vote, even when you present that to a person who hasn't really been informed, they're going to say, well, of course I want my vote to count. Everyone wants their vote to count, and so do rural Utahns want every person's vote to count. They do have to make the initiative to show up. Now, the second, what would you have to say to that, to retort to that? And the second part of my question is, I know you're not working for free, and
Sure.
I know that your group here is being funded. There are expenses that are involved. There's expenses involved in promoting this campaign. Who is funding it? Where is the revenue coming from?
Okay, so let me answer the second question first, if I may. So yes, I own a very small niche company called Intermountain Communications. It's really just me and a couple of guys, and we have been hired by the Count My Vote committee And honestly, as a small business owner, I'm involved in this not so because of the money, because for us, there's really very little. But I'm passionate about this. To answer kind of part of the other question, sir, I believe, like I said, I think the caucus system has some good merits. But I believe there's a big chunk of Utahns that are disenfranchised with our political system. And I recognize you might not agree with that because you're shaking your head, and probably the majority of this room doesn't agree with that, and that's okay. All we want to do, sir, is get this issue on a ballot and let Utahns decide.
Are we going to disenfranchise rural Utah as a result?
I don't believe so. Like I showed on the slide, sir, if you played the strict number games in the convention, strict numbers, they would hardly have to spend any time in rural counties. So we say that it could increase your rural participation. But this is my personal view.
But your big chunk that you talk about, if you know how many registered Republicans are and how many registered Democrats there are, then you know that the biggest chunk of people in Utah are unaffiliated voters. Those unaffiliated voters already have a direct primary system available to them. All they have to do is go get signatures right now and go to the ballot.
You're right.
So why is this going to replace it? You're taking the ability of the parties to designate who supports their platforms the best and giving it to an unaffiliated voter who doesn't support either platform.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if I agree with that. We're not. You said the party to designate. In this model, the convention system would designate and endorse a candidate.
No, our party wouldn't endorse anybody who randomly chose to go to circumvent us.
On the ballot, okay, so on the ballot, anyone is going to have an R behind their name. So you say we endorse, but that won't show up on the ballot, correct?
No, they will actually have their name as our candidate without our consent.
I know, but what I'm saying is he's saying we can go through convention and endorse them as a party.
But the people who are going to try and do that are the people who we vetted out because we didn't think they met our platform standards.
Exactly. If I may.
One second, and hold on. Thank you for your comments.
Sorry.
Listen, I appreciate you voicing your concern. Our position and my personal belief is that we can do more to involve all of Utahns.
So who funded it? That's what I was
Oh, that's a great question. So the strategy group. So we did receive and it's all. By the way, this is all online, filed with the Lieutenant Governor's office as the law stipulates. Gail Miller has been
Is it a tax deductible donation?
I don't believe so. No. Gail Miller has given a very sizable amount, but she's never been truly politically active. Her issue is literacy. That's what her baby is. And funding this is the place, Marvin's parking lot. We received money from Gail Miller, Matheson, Governor Levitt has contributed some money. But we also, in the last 5 days, we have an entire small dollar donation program. And I will say that it's been impressive, the amount of $5, $10, $15, $100. Last night, a random attendee at one of our events gave us a check for $500, just some guy. So,
And all of our donors are Utahns. There's no outside money in this.
And do they have
Don't you think that this is, really behind this is really just a way for incumbents to stay in power and not lose their seats like Bennett did?
I don't personally believe that.
Because you're gonna have money and manpower to get all those signatures, and what Joe Schmo is gonna be able to go and do that. I'm not gonna be able to go and do that.
Well, I couldn't say. I would say that if I wanted to run for Congress, I'd find a way to get my signatures.
So you go out of state to some
Well, no.
lobbyist.
So are you saying that I would do that?
No, I'm just saying that any candidate who's really going to have any chance is going to go to a special interest group and get their funding so that they can run
You have no
profits.
choice, because that's a money.
Ma'am, you've been waiting forever. Yes.
Well, I have a very simple mind, and so I like to get right on the very bottom level. I have an example. There was a gentleman that wanted to run for county commissioner a while back. And he had a lot of backers financially. He was in the area, and he was in the oil field, and he had a lot of influential backers. But guess what? The delegates came. They talked to him. they found out he had no clue about politics whatsoever. He wanted to repeal the Federal Reserve System as a county commissioner. And of course, the delegates, he didn't make the 40%. Now, if in this system, what would have happened is his name, of course, these backers that he had would have gotten the signatures. He would have gone on there. They would have told him what to say and what to, they would have written his advertisements, and he would be in there. He still wouldn't know anything about politics, but he would do what he was told. He would do whatever these guys told him to do. And he would, and that's what I think we're going to get. And this makes me really sad. It makes me really depressed, especially in light of what happened yesterday to our country. And I feel like these are our grassroots. These are the last freedoms that we have. You're trying to take them away.
I was a state delegate, and I went to the state convention. And yes, we are a pretty Republican county. We're a pretty civilized county. There's good folks here. But there are people running for office that are outstanding human beings. But there are a few out there that I wouldn't trust with a burnout match and a bucket of water. Now, not only did the caucus system and the convention system weed those people out, but they also sent a message to Orrin Hatch, who everybody thought was a GOP juggernaut and a lock, that he did not have a lock on his party's nomination. That's checks and balances. And it worked at that convention.
Sir, did I say that was going to call you, but I never did?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 times.
All right, ma'am. I'm just kidding.
My name is Dwayne Shepard, someone who's in the room. I'm Dwayne Shepard, I'm the chairman of the Union County Republican Party. We've got our Duchesne County chair here. We've got our former chair, Joan Crane here. We've got a few people in this room that say, we have a vested interest in what's going to happen in this county. And it's my belief that if this initiative passes, we become insignificant. We have a populace from Weaver County, Davis County, Salt Lake County, and Utah County, and those 4 counties will decide everything and anything that happens in the state when it comes to the statewide races. Now, last April before last, our last caucus, when I met Ellen, I became a county delegate, came to our last April meeting when we had our county convention, and guess what? I got selected as with a coin toss as the chairman.
And I nominated him, and I said, that man right there.
Exactly right. We are grassroots. I actually came in from on an oil well a little while ago. I was putting together a chemical to run to the backside of the well, got dirt under my fingers to come to this meeting. And that's the type of guy I am. I'm out there working hand to foot. You got lots of kids to take care of and all that, but these are the people that are running this county. We're a very conservative county, and I think we need to stay a conservative county. And we're one of the most conservative counties, not just in the state, but in the United States. And we are under a microscope. And if we don't continue to work together, to stay together as a conservative group, then we fall. We fall into things like this. And that's where it goes. When it comes to Bob Bennett, you know what? I honestly think this is a vendetta that he had against getting voted out. We wouldn't have Senator Lee. We wouldn't have Jason Chaffetz. We wouldn't have those guys in office right now if we had this system in place. It's caucus system is what keeps us. We have a representative republic. Not everybody goes to all the meetings because they know they have a representative taking care of what they need to take care of, and they can call on the phone anytime to talk to them. We have to keep our caucus system. Thanks.
Thank you. A couple of more minutes. But again, I just want to thank you for coming. I know you guys think I'm crazy for standing up here and spouting
We
this
think you're
stuff.
great. We think you're pretty
But I do. I'm happy to be here.
We
And
understand that you're being paid to say it now.
well, I'm not.
You gotta be.
Well, I guess to be fair, because I would say that's fairly rude. I mean, I believe in this.
Well, no, you just said.
I'm in the position where I have a chance to work on something I believe in. It's like if you work on a political campaign. How many of you have volunteered on a political campaign?
Volunteered, yes.
No, I have. I volunteered
So
on
why won't you volunteer this?
Well, by the amount of money I get paid, it's about volunteering.
No, I'm not being rude. You told us that you were being paid,
But,
that your company was being paid to do this.
but I'm telling you folks, I believe it.
Okay, I've been driving to the Wasatch Front for monthly meetings on how to fix our caucus system and the things that you critique so that we can actually refine it and make it better and a better experience for our attendees. And I go out there every couple weeks and every month at my own expense. Nobody's paying me to do that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
why, if you're so passionate about this, why wouldn't your company just volunteer your services?
Because I have 3 kids and a wife that I have to.
That's
how
not
I
3
choose
kids
to make
and a
my.
husband.
That's how I choose to make my money. I don't want to argue with you about it, but. Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I probably represent a different point of view on some of these things, but I have a lot of friends that consider themselves independent,
Okay.
and they do not participate in the caucuses. They've moved to Utah, or moved to UNT County, and they don't get what a caucus is. They don't get going to a stranger's house that they don't know to do this, and that whole thing is very intimidating, very frightening, and they don't participate. And I am not for 1 minute implying that we have elected inappropriate people, because I probably have worked with the county elected people more than anyone in this room except Mr. Haslam. But they would like a chance to have a choice for county commissioner on a primary ballot. They would like to have a choice for sheriff on a primary ballot. And because they don't participate in that, their choice is either to go in and rubber stamp the person that's on there, but they really have no chance of really weighing in on those local issues that are more important to them. And I understand completely the rhetoric that there is about the Mike Lees and the Jason Chavits, and I understand where that is. But I'm speaking about the people who maybe have a different opinion who they'd like to have for sheriff. And they don't know how to make that happen because they don't understand the whole caucus thing, and they would like a chance to have an opportunity to vote in a primary for a county commissioner or a county treasurer or a county clerk, and they don't know how to do that, and they're frustrated by that. And I think those are the people who are perhaps maybe going to be interested in this. I can't speak for them, but.
Ma'am?
I just have a couple, I don't know, just my oversight of what I see on this is the purpose of this that you're saying is to increase voter participation.
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the younger people in your room.
Yeah.
Not young, but younger. And for me, just the active participation in voting, I don't think it comes from necessarily the caucus system in the way it is either. I look at it and think maybe just lack of education on my generation's and younger generations is that the importance of using your vote. I think that your vote counts, and that when you go to these meetings, they get heated. Those caucus meetings, those cottage meetings, they can get heated, but it's good that people care, and I think that's what, like, people in my generation, they don't necessarily understand that you can go and you can have a vote and a voice. And I look at this system and I don't necessarily think that this initiative increases that.
I want to make one correction. I've never been to a caucus meeting that has been heated.
Well,
it's just, if this meeting could be considered heated.
It's just good dialogue.
It's good dialogue, but it's important. I think it's important for people to talk about the views of themselves and their beliefs as opposed to issues. I think it's important for people to talk about candidates and what they represent or don't. And that's what I mean by heated. I don't think that.
So are you saying they could use an education campaign to be helpful in voter turnout
I
instead of
think
this?
that this isn't necessarily going to educate people. If, like you were saying, if people don't want to come to the meeting, they're going to come. I don't necessarily know that in every area people are getting out and saying, come to cottage meetings and the caucuses. I do know I attended our last caucus and it was huge turnout. But I don't think, if truly the point is to have people increase their voting participation, I don't necessarily think that this initiative is going to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. Thank you.
and I look at, like when you planned the meeting, plan this meeting, I get that you have to do a lot of things in a short amount of time, because that's how processes work. But, you know, planning it in the middle of the day on a Thursday, people who are home or who have the ability to leave their job, but not everybody could. Like, my husband couldn't necessarily just leave his job just to come. So I think that if truly your purpose for this initiative is to increase participation of voters, I don't necessarily feel like this is what that's doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're over our time, and we'll stick around for just a couple more minutes, but we have to get on the road. Sir, if you want to come on up, talk to me, that'd be fantastic.
I just had one comment. For your military man and your doctor, emergency room doctor,
Sure.
they can call their delegate and talk to them. I'm open to calls from anybody that is interested in talking to me, because that's how I form my decisions and how I vote.
I'll tell you, I've got
That's how everybody
and a
does.
missionary, both of them, this wasn't on here. The Marine guy, you know what, he's an Okinawa, he doesn't really care, he's 20 years old. The missionary, he's supposed to be head down in the work anyway. He's not supposed to pay attention to politics. So it's a no point.
And I just have a quick note, is that a lot of the things that are legitimate concerns about inconveniences of the caucus system have been addressed by this committee, and they've been working on it not just the last couple of weeks, but for months they've been working and meeting and hashing out, almost a year now, they've been working on proposals. And night before last, we had our final vote on the things we were going to put forward to our state central committee. And then last night, our executive committee of our state voted on those as well and passed all the recommendations. And so we are calling a special state central committee meeting, which will be October 26th. Nope, they changed it back to October 26th.
What was
It's
your?
going to be in Fillmore and the state legislative, the old territorial state house. And we are going to almost everything they were critical of, we have some kind of way that we can be more open, help facilitate same-day voting and things like that for caucus meetings. And I have to give this organization, the one thing it did accomplish is it did unify the factions within the party that were keeping progress from being made. And we know those have existed. And there have been problems in the party. And believe it or not, the most polarly apart conservatives within our party are all sitting down at the table and are all voting in favor of these initiatives. So if there's anything positive that comes out of it, this has lit a fire under them. So thank you.
You're welcome.